Hi there, dear lovely YouTube viewer. Totally Amazing here, the home of scientific knowledge, discovery, truth, research, and of course, expert knowledge within the technological industry since the 1st of January 2019. Now, you've heard of Huawei, a Chinese company out of Shenzhen and Guangzhou region of China, and they're a technological giant that happen to produce cell phones, but actually, no, they produce more than that, because they also produce these items. This is a mobile Wi-Fi broadband dongle, but actually they produce more than this, and this is what we're looking at today and the implications for you as a user of Huawei products and what Google and YouTube may have in store for you. Because Huawei also produce things that look like this. Now this is a little bit more than just your average cell phone, and unfortunately there is something that they also produce, but unfortunately getting into this building would be near on impossible, because those things are called macro base stations or cell sites. They also produce various cabinets and switching equipment, for which we'll have a look at in a moment on this screen. So, the issue that you may be concerned of as a consumer is if you have purchased a Huawei P30 or you have a similar Huawei device like this, mostly affecting cell phones, but I suppose it could affect these as well, mobile devices aside of cell phones. So basically the whole hoo-ha is now YouTube and Google have said, well, hang on a minute, Huawei, you can't use our stuff. We're not providing you updates or anything any further. Now, Android are also involved in this because they're saying now that they want to end all support for Huawei devices. Now, I don't need to tell you why that would be absurd for people like Google and YouTube and Android developers to do that. Nothing's probably going to come of this, and if it does, the only likely result of this is just going to be a technological arms race over the consumer. Don't forget, this is just manufacturing companies now that, I mean, this was all supposedly to do with this hacking scandal, which has gotten way out of proportion. No, it wasn't really about the hacking per se, at least I don't think it was. I think there was a lot more going on than this. And the recent reviews of the Huawei P30 have sparked this off, to be fair. Are Huawei at fault with this? No, I don't believe they are. I don't think that Huawei are the guilty parties here. I think they're just doing what any self-respecting Chinese or any self-respecting business, for that matter, would. And the issue is here as well, Western companies that don't like Chinese ethics. This is all mostly to do with politics, and the reason why now Donald Trump and all of the rest are starting to get kind of tetchy about this. There's a lot of muttering going on. But for you as the end user, I'm going to say this. If Google, YouTube and Android pulled the plug for any support on current devices in circulation or anything that's due to be released, I think there's going to be some problems. I think the first problem would be, let's have a look at just some of the infrastructure here. If we zoom in, we can show you exactly what Huawei are about. Now, you may not be able to read a lot of this. It may be just a bit too small. But what we can do is we can start to give you the links on this, which you can look at yourself as well. to see exactly what Huawei do and the significance of this. And the first site is https www.huawei.com/en/news/press-events/HUAWEI-release-tubestar. Now, okay, this website is a couple of years out of date, and I do apologise for the coughing. But this just goes to show you some of the things that Huawei do. You see, the things are, it's not just phones, laptops, tablets, wearables, accessories and smart homes. No. If we look in the for business side, they do switches, routers, wireless LAN, storage, other things as well, data centers, enterprise networking, intelligent computing, cloud services. In fact, let's actually have a look at some of the other products they do as well. And while that's loading up, let's show you some of the other infrastructure. Now, macro base stations, you would have heard me tell you about those during this video. What those are, essentially, nothing more than cell sites. You get indoor and outdoor types and cabinets and whatever, and the necessary antennas, and this is what these things look like. And this is obviously to do with some of the E2E stuff, that's the end-to-end services and end-to-end encryption, and basically what drives essentially your entire cellular network. And a lot of it also just happens to drive the physical hardwired network as well. So, you know, people like here in the UK, companies like British Telecom would actually have network cabinets installed and things of this particular nature. And basically then what you will then have is that hardware is installed, obviously, well, is manufactured by Huawei, and your telephone providers, cable companies, satellite communications, whatever, would have this installed. So what does this mean for you as the end user? Well, let's just put this in quite simple terms for you. If Google and YouTube and Android, Facebook, if they get involved in this as well, which is possible, if these guys all decide, well, hang on a minute, Huawei, we don't want you using our software, Huawei could come along and essentially then say, well, we don't want you using our hardware. Now, Huawei could do this in a number of ways. They could release an update, a firmware update, to the particular hardware in question, and essentially then what happens is that that update, so a software update for a firmware on boards like this, would then essentially turn the functionality of that board off or render it useless. Now, the potential for that means that one day you decide to get up and you want to look at the news, or send a Facebook post, or respond to a text message or a tweet, or look at something in general online, and then you realise you can't, and that you're without a essentially a communications network. I think the first thing that would happen in that circumstance is you would end up with a whole bunch of people, and particularly Google, YouTube, and all of the these other main vendors, throwing their arms up in outrage over it for the fact that Huawei could come along and disconnect its hardware. Let's not forget, though, it's Huawei's equipment. They are the end user. They are the, well, not the end user, sorry, they are the system vendor. They're the manufacturer and vendor of these devices. If you have purchased one of those devices, you're the end user. Huawei can, by rights, end their support for that at any time. they could provide a software update for any of their equipment, whether it be server boards, comms boards like that, or these mobile dongles or phones or whatever. They can just simply come along and say, that's it. Your device is not going to work because we're releasing a mandatory update. You go to update, the thing shuts off. If that happens, as we've already said, your phone network goes down immediately. And what would the likes of Google, what would the likes of Android and YouTube and anybody else be able to say on that? Because that would be a huge double standard on their part. If they don't want Huawei using their software, why should they then complain when Huawei say, well then you can't use our hardware? You see, the implications for that are much more severe. Certainly, if you're on the receiving end from a Huawei problem, as opposed to Huawei being on the receiving end of a Google or YouTube problem. You see, the truth of the matter is this. Huawei can resolve their problems easily. All they need to seriously do is just design and develop their own operating systems. This is not that difficult to do. You see, they can use Linux as the backbone of their cell phone operations anyway. Linux is completely open source and free. All they need to do is just take a copy of that, seriously, make some tweaks and changes to the particular needs of their devices. Hey presto, a software operating system in as little as maybe a few months. Whereas, if Huawei end their support for hardware, you have, at best, nearly years to resolve your issue. And the reason being is because you're going to have to contact, if you're a service provider, you're going to have to contact people like me. People that are going to be able to basically reverse engineer these boards, dismantle them, find out how they work, and essentially build new ones from scratch. And obviously, new firmware, new software. That's going to take years. So I don't think Huawei are in really any problem with this. I don't think Google and YouTube would be so irresponsible as to actually do that. They may do, but I don't think so. I do believe that there would be provisions put in place in that eventuality. Now, obviously, if I know about this, I'm pretty sure that within Huawei and within Google and YouTube, they're definitely going to know about this. I mean, as I said, within the technological industry, I'm definitely one of the forefront worldwide with this stuff. I'm definitely up to date on it. Now, in addition to this, we now have Donald Trump thrown into the mix as well, and various other world leaders. This is interesting now, because theoretically, the world leaders can say of Western countries, we don't want this company on our shores. Well, you've already got them on the backbone of your networks. All of your hardware, or a great deal of it, is produced, designed and built by Huawei. And it works, it's cost effective and it's cheap. And it does the job. And more importantly, Huawei do the job well. This is why things like the P30, and this is why a lot of their base stations are so popular, and why Vodafone are using them on their 5G network. This is the reason why. So along comes now people like Theresa May, Donald Trump and all of the rest of the world leaders who may well say, well, in that case then, Huawei, we don't want you operating it within our country. We are basically going to boycott you, and your devices are now banned from being imported. That's not going to resolve anything at all, in my opinion. I think all that will happen there is Huawei are going to design and develop their own software anyway. All right? They are very much, the ball is very much in the court of Huawei. And I favour it, to be honest with you. I favour it to some degree. Now, I don't know, as I said, whether the hacking situation is true. If it is, Huawei have something to answer for with that. I mean, when I say if it's true, I'm pretty sure I know what the score is with this. And for the time being, I'm standing by Huawei on it. I don't think it's as serious as what people are making out. I think this is, as we said, due to politics, westernized values over China, and the fact that China have been doing what they've been doing. I'm going to sort of step this back in a moment, back to where we were going with the politics side about shutting Huawei down. But for the moment, let's just look at what China are about. They're a massive country. They have a huge population. They have massive resources and a labour force that's willing to work cheaply. How can you blame a Chinese company for launching equipment and launching materials, or any company for that matter? How can you even blame China for this? At the end of the day, they have the materials. They have the technological advancement. They have all of the staffing requirements, all of the people, everything they need and land, and more. You, as the consumer, have the demand. So all China are doing, essentially, is meeting that demand. They have the supply, you have the demand. It's a mutual transaction. Now, the political side, sort of political side of this is another thing. Again, world leaders could start saying, Western world leaders could start saying, well, in that case, then we don't want Huawei and their cell phone products on our shores. All that'll happen is people will just say, well, they're cheap. You know, as opposed to paying nearly $1,000 for a rival product, such as like an iPhone or Samsung, well, for a fraction of that, we can use Huawei. So people will find a way of getting the devices anyway. And if it's if Huawei have developed then at that point their own operating systems, which I'm pretty sure they're on the verge of doing anyway, how can you stop that? You see, all they need to do is improve the technology for their devices anyway. And, you know, well, they already have their equipment, the physical infrastructure. So it's not like it's going to be a problem until, obviously, we're, here in the UK, if people were to start pulling out Huawei products. But again, then you're looking at changing your entire hardware infrastructure as well. So no, I don't think that's going to happen. I think all that's going to happen is, in the long run, you as a consumer are going to have technology brought to you a lot cheaper. Because even if it was made illegal to own a Huawei phone in this country, even if importing it became a criminal offence, things that are seen as banned and things that are seen as blacklisted are even more sought after. You know, it's the whole idea about being in control and say, well, look, I've got something here that the powers that be say I shouldn't have. So, no, I don't think really as you, the customer, are going to really have much of a problem. For the short term, you might do. But again, if you're on contract with this, I would urge you to go and see your provider about this anyway. If things like YouTube and particular parts of Google are an issue for you, again, for the short term, I would be inclined to start looking elsewhere just because of the potential risk. But in the long term, I really don't think you're going to have anything to worry about. As probably the utmost of final solutions, what you'll probably see is, again, as mentioned earlier, China already have things like WeChat, Weibo, and their own social networking platforms anyway. So Huawei will just release new phones with their own operating system that will work with their websites. That's all you're going to see, is just basically the development of that. It's no different to really North Korea. They have their own stuff as well. Admittedly, a lot of them still use in North Korea things like, they still have iPhones and Samsung, but their internal, they have what's known as an intranet. Okay, so it's an internet within that country that the general people use. It would just be the same as that, but just on a global scale. So I think what you'll end up seeing is the emergence of a direct rival of YouTube and a direct rival of Google. I think that's what's going to happen. And that's not going to take a huge amount of time. Huawei, they could even monopolize the market for doing this. The reason being is because, the rules that we have here in the West are not quite the same as what there is in China. There's nothing stopping from Huawei now to develop their own websites geared for chat, geared for search engine. Huawei, they could even release their own search engine in time. There's nothing to stop them doing that. And if they are being sponsored by, the Chinese government, if they are backed, then, that's interest for China as well. So I think people, to be honest with you, are only going to go where the money is, where it's viable for them, where the consumer gets the best deal. That's ultimately what this is going to boil down to. Who gets the best deal out of it and who are the losers? Well, the losers, for the short term, probably are going to be end users, like yourselves, who rely on things like Facebook. Maybe Twitter may get involved in this, hard to say. Maybe Facebook are involved, or maybe they will. It's hard to say. But certainly, for the short term, if anything does happen, you as the end user may suffer some problems with it. And it would only be applicable anyway to a serious level on new devices. If there is the kind of end of support for certainly the Android side, that may affect you, but again, that's only going to be a short-term thing. Huawei will pretty quickly have a fix for that, I would have thought. They could do what's known as OTA updates, so over the air. They can release their own operating systems anyway. Worst case scenario, there'd be a product recall. You would take your device back to your place of purchase, either get a refund or a suitable alternative. Devices would get returned back to Huawei. Huawei would just simply patch them with their own operating systems and redistribute. I think that's all that would happen. Unless, of course, people like Donald Trump decide that they don't want these devices in the country at all, and in which case then they say, hey, look, it's blacklisted. Then maybe you'll start to see things happen as a result. But I certainly think for the short term, it's not going to be that bad. It really won't. Long term, as we said, the losers in this are probably going to be Google, YouTube, because it's just going to create, it's just basically an invite now, an open invite for Huawei to say, right, okay, we're just going to create our own platforms. That's all that'll happen. The plus side is, for you, the end user, for you, the consumer, it creates more choice and cheaper products, because after all, Samsung, an iPhone here, if they're selling a product for $1,000 or whatever, Huawei can sell you on this hand for only several hundred. Samsung lower their cost, Huawei lower their cost. So I think all we're going to see now is a tech arms race of certainly the end user technological industry, so the smartphone industry as well. We're going to see devices now really becoming more and more advanced quickly to justify the cost. So you're going to see people like Huawei now developing next generation phones, next generation capability to justify that £1,000 expense. Samsung now are going to try and leapfrog over that. Huawei are going to come along and leapfrog over that. You've got Apple involved in this, and even myself getting involved as well, alongside with other companies out there like Siemens, Toshiba and LG. So what you're just basically going to end up with is a huge outright melee, and the real end winner is going to be you, the consumer, pretty much at the end of the day. Again, if there is any concerns over it, I would strongly suggest that you talk to your cell phone vendor. They would be able to help you more further on it. Again, at the moment, for devices already in circulation, it may affect them, it may not, but I would say certainly for long term, it would be sheer suicide for people like Google or YouTube to start saying, hey look, you know, we don't want you using our stuff, because at the end of the day, if these organisations like YouTube, if these businesses and corporates have any Huawei hardware there, they could run into trouble with it. So you'll end up with a stalemate, I reckon, on this. There's going to be a whole lot of talk. This will go on for a few months, I would imagine, unless, of course, a sort of deadlock is broken. And that's really about all there is to it. It just boils down to you, the end user, you, the consumer, and it's essentially just a war over that. All this kicked off because of the P30 and such positive reviews on this as well, and a few other so-called things that have come to media attention. And this is what's transpired, all of this nonsense, over the last few weeks. Again, probably not much is necessarily going to happen, but who knows, who can tell? Who can tell on this? But you can be sure that when I know, you'll know. But I would say, worst case at the moment, you may have to change your device. You may well end up going back to Samsung, or if you were not already with them or whatever, you'll end up using Samsung or LG, Motorola or whatever, or iPhone, Apple products, whoever you may use. I think all that Huawei will do is they could just get on top of it and say, well, we'll just recall the product anyway and just patch. Or even, they may not even need to do a recall. They could just do an OTA update over the air and just patch over a new operating system when that becomes released. No doubt within my mind they're already working on that. I'm sure Huawei would love to continue a relationship with Google, with YouTube and, and Android. Whether that happens, hard to say. That's down to their board of directors and what may happen. But worst case scenario, Huawei are just going to release an OTA update for the P30 and whatever new phones come on the market. And I suppose if governments get uppity about this and start trying to muscle around, Huawei could always just pull the plug on their hardware. That would have some interesting repercussions as well, but I think we're a long, long way away from that. Overall verdict, long term, you're going to see cheaper products. You're going to see the technological industry, certainly with things like cell phones here. You're going to start to see these things become more increasingly powerful. Samsung are definitely going to want to compete with this, as will Apple. And as such, it's just going to be an arms race with this. They're always going to be constantly seeing if the next one can outdo each other in terms of tech advancement. No difference between the arms race in the sort of Cold War and the space race with US and Russia. We're just going to start seeing it now with technology. That's to pretty much sum it up. So as the end user, you can expect to just see cheaper prices, I would say, in the long term. That's what I'm forecasting. Other than that, keep enjoying your products anyway, because until something really gives, I don't think you're going to have much to worry about. And until then, stay totally amazing, and I'll see you soon. Bye.